The prevailing analysis of systemic risk is focused on kinetic exchange, missiles, launch-on warning protocols. This is a deliberate misdirection. The next-generation protocol for collapsing a superpower is not based on firepower. It is based on disabling the central nervous system of the state. The second vector of silence is orbital. Military command, GPS navigation, and secure communications are entirely dependent on satellite constellations. State actors are operationalizing this liability. After a Russian BM-35 drone was recovered, Ukrainian specialists found it had been equipped with a Starlink-type satellite terminal. This is the blueprint, weaponizing civilian infrastructure to blind the adversary's military and financial architecture. Sever the cables and blind the satellites. The result is not a crater. It is a solvency crisis. The state becomes a blind leviathan, a superpower with immense kinetic force, but no ability to see, to communicate, or to transact. Its markets freeze. Its logistics fail. Its currency enters a death spiral. This is asymmetric escalation, engineering catastrophic failure with minimal force. The motive is not conquest. It is a mathematical function of weakness. When a state cannot compete symmetrically, tank for tank, ship for ship, it is forced to pivot. The kinetic cost of conventional warfare is a terminal diagnosis for a declining power. The objective must therefore change, not to defeat the enemy's military, but to bankrupt the state that funds it. This is not theoretical. It is a live protocol. CSIS analysis frames Russia's strategic pivot as a direct response to the war becoming a significant domestic liability. An unpopular conflict drains political capital and accelerates internal dissent, creating a solvency crisis at home. The state must then abandon expensive symmetric strategies for low-cost, high-impact asymmetric attacks. The objective shifts from winning territory to inflicting disproportionate economic pain on the adversary and its backers. The adoption of low-cost attack drones, equipped with commercial satellite terminals, is not a technological curiosity. It is the physical evidence of this pivot. It is the weaponization of economic disparity. This blueprint explicitly targets the opponent's core systemic liabilities. The goal is to trigger a cascade failure by creating an energy crisis, as analysts warn a conflict with Iran could provoke, or by exacerbating internal political fractures, forcing the state to misallocate federal assets to police domestic protests. A solvency crisis occurs when a superpower's liabilities, its debt, its fragile supply chains, its political polarization exceed its capacity to respond. Asymmetric escalation is the protocol designed to accelerate this imbalance. The lesson from Venezuela is that immense resource wealth is no defense against systemic collapse. Weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. The motive is to transform the battlefield from a physical space to the enemy's balance sheet, engineering a collapse without firing a single ballistic missile. The central protocol of asymmetric escalation is economic. It is a calculation of lethality per dollar. A 2023 analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, quantifies this new battlefield calculus. On one side, a nation-state deploys a main battle tank, a kinetic asset valued at over $5 million. On the other, a non-state actor deploys a commercial-grade drone, a kinetic asset valued at $500. This is not a symmetric exchange. It is an economic liability attack. The superpower must absorb a multi-million-dollar asset loss, while the weaker actor risks a negligible sum. For every 10,000 drones an adversary can build for the price of one tank, the mathematical certainty of a successful strike approaches 1. The objective is not to destroy an army, but to trigger a solvency crisis by forcing a superpower to bankrupt itself on defense. This is the democratization of violence, the collapsing cost of projecting lethal force. The monopoly on high-impact kinetic capability, once held exclusively by superpowers, has been broken by consumer technology. Reports confirm adversaries are now retrofitting attack drones with Starlink-type satellite terminals, leveraging public infrastructure to achieve global command and control for pennies on the dollar. The barrier to entry for creating systemic failure is now lower than the cost of a used car. The battlefield is no longer a defined territory. It is a condition. We call this the gray zone, a state of managed decay where protocols of asymmetric warfare are tested and perfected. These are not failed states by accident. They are proxy laboratories. Analysts at CSIS document how the economic collapse of once-rich nations like Venezuela provides a perfect blueprint. The objective is not to occupy the lab, but to harvest the data on how to engineer a systemic solvency crisis. Within these zones, the kinetic cost of attack plummets to near zero. We are not talking about carrier groups. We are talking about commercial technology repurposed as a strategic weapon. A recent RUSI analysis confirms the vector. Russian attack drones are now being equipped with Starlink-type satellite terminals. This is not an innovation. It is a commoditization of launch-on-warning capability, available to any actor seeking to target a critical liability, like the global oil supply, with full deniability. The gray zone is not merely external, it is metastasizing inside Western borders. The systemic liability is political polarization. Reports documenting the deployment of federal immigration agents to police local protests in Minneapolis are a case study. This is not a policing issue. It is a systemic stress test. External adversaries do not need to create the division. They only need to provide the accelerant, amplifying the conflict to degrade state capacity and trigger a liquidity crisis from within. Therefore, the location is a protocol, not a place. The gray zone is the staging area where low-cost kinetic tools and political accelerants are calibrated. The goal is mathematical. Apply minimal force to a superpower's most fragile, over-leveraged dependencies. Its energy grid, its financial markets, its social contract. The intended outcome is not victory in a war. It is a forced systemic deleveraging, a solvency crisis. This isn't a prediction. It is an active threat vector. The protocol is known as launch-on-warning. It is a Cold War relic, a doomsday machine operating on a simple, brutal logic. If our early warning systems detect an inbound nuclear strike, we launch our counterstrike before the incoming warheads can destroy our ability to retaliate. The system's integrity is based on one assumption, that the data from the radar is real. This assumption is now the single greatest systemic liability in the Western defense architecture. Analysts at CSIS confirm the emergent threat is not a missile, but a signal, a cyber attack that spoofs early warning data, creating the digital illusion of a full-scale launch. The objective is not to land a kinetic strike, but to force the target to launch on ghosts. This is the fog of digital war. A commander sees 1,000 inbound vectors on a screen that has just been blinded by a cyber attack. Is it a system glitch, or are the missiles 10 minutes from impact? The launch-on-warning protocol removes the element of choice. To hesitate is to accept annihilation. The protocol demands a launch. The blueprint for this vector is already operational at a tactical level. Reports confirm Russian drones are now equipped with Starlink-type satellite terminals, weaponizing commercial infrastructure for kinetic attack. Scale this protocol to the strategic level. An adversary with no blue water navy and a fraction of the GDP can now leverage a cyber weapon to trigger a global solvency crisis, achieving with zero kinetic cost what entire armies could not. The accepted model of systemic risk is obsolete. State-on-state symmetric warfare is a legacy protocol. The current vector is asymmetric escalation, using minimal kinetic force to trigger a catastrophic solvency crisis in an over-leveraged system. The blueprint for an unattributable strike is no longer theoretical. It is operational. Ukrainian specialists have recovered Russian attack drones equipped with Starlink-type satellite terminals. A weapons system leveraging commercial, globally available technology makes the actor mathematically impossible to identify. The target is selected for maximum economic leverage. According to WION, avoiding conflict with actors like Iran is critical specifically to prevent a global oil crisis. This identifies the adversary's target, not the U.S. military, but its core economic liability, the energy supply chain that underwrites its liquidity. Therefore, the calibration shot is a certainty. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a coordinated, low-signature strike on a key U.S. Gulf Coast energy node, a major LNG terminal or pipeline manifold. The event will be framed as a catastrophic industrial accident or localized blackout. The kinetic cost will be negligible. The impact on energy futures will be immediate and severe. Attribution will be impossible by design. The objective is not destruction. It is to collect data on the system's failure cascade and the political paralysis that follows an unattributable attack.